Welcome, fellow Stardust. Are you ready for a scare? Unlike my other reviews, this one is going to be unscripted for a couple of reasons. The first one being time. As some of you know, I was in Europe from September 26th to October 5th, so I've only recently seen the new Saw movie. I was actually pretty disappointed to learn that right before my trip, they had bumped up the release date of Saw by about a month, and that really messed up my whole Spooktober Special schedule. But I moved some things around, so hopefully this review will be out about 2 weeks after its release date. The other reason why this will be unscripted is because I'm afraid of getting into too many details and getting into spoiler territory. But on Sunday, we'll be getting into all of the spoilers during my live stream. I'll be joined by 3 of my YouTube friends and we'll be discussing each installment in the franchise. Also, on Halloween, I am planning on releasing my Saw franchise ranking video, which will obviously be full of spoilers. So for now, I'll just be sharing with you my spoiler-free initial thoughts. Now, this movie, just wonderful. My hopes were already high when I found out that Kevin Grudert was going to be the director for this installment, because he had already directed Saw 6 and Saw 7, or Saw 3D, both movies I enjoyed, and he has also directed most of the installments, including this one. And editing is sort of like being able to direct the film in post, and with him being able to direct and edit this movie, because he wasn't able to do that with 6 and 7, it just gave him that much more creative freedom that he very much deserved, because he really knows the Saw world. He understands the atmosphere, he understands the heart of the movie, and he was just the perfect person to bring this franchise back to life after the negative reception from audiences of Spiral, which people have criticism for that I completely understand, but for me, I enjoyed Spiral. We'll get more into that on Sunday and on Halloween. We also got the same writers from Jigsaw and Spiral, Josh Stolberg and Peter Goldfinger, who will likely be the writers for Saw 11. There is definitely going to be a Saw 11. So as any Saw fan knows, the timelines and storylines get a bit convoluted and confusing. So for this installment, it was really nice to kind of take things back to a simpler time. This one takes place between Saw 1 and Saw 2, right before the game starts in Saw 2 that Amanda is a facilitator of. In Saw 6, we learned that John Kramer had gone to his health insurance agent asking for coverage on a procedure to help cure his brain cancer done by a Norwegian doctor, but the agent denied his claim. The agent, William, was then put on Kramer's rehabilitation list. This comes into play in this latest installment because John finally gets to secure a spot for this forbidden procedure. And as the trailer will let you know, the procedure wasn't so helpful. In fact, it didn't even happen. And little did they know, John was the wrong mother to fuck with. To exact his revenge, Kramer sets up individual traps for each of his victims, all within this huge warehouse, and everybody gets a free show of everybody completing their tasks. And man, are these new traps a whole lot of fun. So going back to my previous point, this story is a much simpler one than the stories later on in the franchise, because this is coming directly after Saw 1, which we all understand pretty well and know that Kramer was trying to look for treatment since Western medicine wasn't helping. And then in Saw 10, or you could call it 1.5, he is crossed and then he handles it. Pretty straightforward. There was no confusion about who set up the trap or who chose the victim for a particular trap. There was just John Kramer and Amanda. And with this simplicity also came this personal touch. The movie just felt more personal again. We had Kramer right there face to face with his victims, talking to them, watching them as they try to escape their traps. And this is 100% Tobin Bell's best performance in the franchise. You really feel for this man, and if you weren't on his side at all during this entire franchise, you will be by the end of this movie. His eyes were so expressive. You saw the hope in his eyes, you saw the anger, you saw the helplessness, and you also saw his confidence, and his stubbornness is going nowhere. I always wavered a bit as to whether or not I was Team John. In the first film, I certainly was, but as the franchise went on, it was kind of hard to be 100% Team John. The reasoning for choosing some of his victims become a bit frivolous, it seems, or at least not reasons enough to kill these people. And then we'd also have Amanda messing traps up where they didn't even have the chance to actually escape those traps. Things would seem to sometimes get a bit unfair, if you could say that word for a movie like this. Now, these traps that we got in this one are just so good. Although I did like Spiral, some of those traps were a little bit soft, I guess you could say. Like I said before, I did enjoy the overall movie, but these traps in this latest installment really took us back to the nitty-gritty. I wonder if the trap that is on the promotional poster is an homage to a trap in Spiral, because Fitch is also fitted with a finger trap that rips his fingers off. The trap in the poster has those eye tubes, but it also has a device on the man's fingers where it's breaking his fingers back. Could be a bit of a stretch, but there aren't too many traps in the franchise that involve fingers or toes. And I also think this because there are so many homages to the different installments in the franchise. I've only noticed a few, but I'm sure there are a ton. One would be the plastic divider that acts kind of like a door that we see in Saw 3 as well as in Spiral, and I think in one other installment. The bathroom in Saw 1 is referenced, and we also see Kramer drawing the design for the rack trap from Saw 3, the one that twists the man's limbs off and his head. Jigsaw and Spiral were heavy on the Saw franchise homages, and this one was no different. So I'm looking forward to watching this movie multiple times to catch them all. This movie was certainly made for us Saw fans. Again, we get back to this simpler, more personal time, and we just get the raw Kramer, the raw Amanda, before things start to evolve into what they ended up becoming in Saw 6 and 7. John's principles, which were influenced by Eastern philosophy, were more easily understood, and we could relate to it and somewhat agree with it. The cinematography for the franchise has mostly been David A. Armstrong. He shot films 1 through 7. Jigsaw was shot by Ben Knott, and it was made to look as much like David's work as possible. Spiral was shot by Jordan Oram, and it has its own look and vibe, but it still fits within the franchise. There are even moments that I think in the Spiral that they brighten up faces much the same way they did in earlier films. I'm not sure if that was necessary or they just did it to do it as an homage. We'll get more into that again on Sunday and Halloween. Saw 10 is shot by Nick Matthews, who does an excellent job of recreating the atmosphere that we all love so dearly. And Kevin once again did his thing with the color grading, unless they have somebody separate doing the color grading. But we get that orange, greenish, yellowish tint on some of the scenes, especially when we make it to Mexico. The movie mostly takes place there, and like in a lot of movies, when we transition from the US to Mexico, we get this yellow tint. Could be bothersome for some, but most of the films in the franchise in various scenes have this greenish, yellowish tint, so Saw 10 gets a pass. And as always, the sound design is top notch. When we get to the end and finally get to hear the theme song, Hello Zep, my heart began to race like it does every single time. And this was only the second time that we get an end credit scene, and it is a good one. And like I said before, we are certainly getting a Saw 11. Saw 10 gave me everything I was wanting and more. And I think it accomplished everything that the filmmakers set out to accomplish. And for that, it's a perfect movie. It earns 5 Rainbow Skulls out of 5. Well, thank you for joining me today, fellow Stardust. I appreciate you being here with me. I'll be back on Sunday with actually 2 live streams. So after my live stream on the Saw franchise at 8 p.m. Eastern, I'll be talking with the Guilty Pleasures gang, and we will be doing our last Guilty Pleasures episode. It is finally my turn to pick, and my choices are The Human Centipede and Bad Milo. So, if you haven't already, go ahead and hop on the Rainbow Fright Freight Train and hit that subscribe button along with the notification bell. That way, you'll get notified every time I upload a new video. I hope I see you next time. Peace.